Jessica, 33 I-35 met while in school at Brown University. It was like finding my other half. We both had dreams of impacting the world and making it a better place by becoming medical professionals. She wanted to be a nurse while I wanted to open my own practice. We had a lot of common interests and truly enjoyed each other's company. We got married 2 years after dating and the wedding was a fairy tale. All our friends and family have the time of their lives, and I met her childhood friends and had my best friend, Eric, who I had known my entire life as my best man. Life couldn't have been better, and our honeymoon in Aruba was full of blue skies, clear water and white sand beaches. Once I graduated from men's school, we moved back home to Akron and got the house of our dreams, 6 bedrooms, a glorious pool and a garden that she was so proud of. We began thoughts of having a family and started to talk about having kids. Joseph and Kate, our fraternal twins, were born shortly after that. The joy of having children was something that I never thought I could experience. And Jessica truly shined through her parenting skills. Fast forward to 6 months ago. My practice was booming. Joseph and Kate were 5 and enrolled in the private prep school of our dreams. Life was finally feeling like it had a plan, and I couldn't be more content. That is until Jessica started getting called into for extra shifts because of the nurse shortage. Her shifts kept getting longer and longer as time went on. I started to feel like she was spending more time working than at home with us around this time. I noticed that Jessica seemed to have more perfume and makeup on than usual. She would be in a rush when she left the house and came back late from her shift and slipped into bed when I asked her about it. She said that her patients needed her and that she had to fulfill her duties. I thought it was strange, but just figured she was super dedicated to her job, since that's the kind of person she is. One evening I secretly hired a nanny to watch the kids and got in my car and followed Jessica to work. As I watched her walk into I noticed that instead of taking a left and going to her station, she took a right and entered the cafeteria. I was so curious that I decided to follow her, and then that's when I saw Eric, my best man and lifelong friend, who was a doctor. I told myself that they worked together and this was nothing out of the ordinary. But what happened next had my heart racing. Eric told her that his shift was almost over and that they would slip out quietly and head to the hotel. Turns out that she didn't have a shift to work that night, and Eric and her would be evaluating each other's bedside manner. The worst part of it all was that Eric had been married for 10 years and had 3 beautiful children. I was so angry. I wanted to confront them both but couldn't break myself to do it. Instead, I got in my car and followed them to the hotel. Once I got there, I found out which room they were in and proceeded to wait in the car for another 30 minutes. At that point, I went into the hotel up the elevator and stood silently outside of their room. I pressed my ear to the door to hear what was going on inside, and what I heard made me sick. Let's just say it sounded like a disturbed version of the game Twister. What I thought was a beautiful love story had become twisted. How could the woman I married and the man I trusted pull something like this? I then walked away, still not able to process the truth of what was happening. As I got to the end of the hall, I heard Jessica scream out, "I love you," and my stomach dropped. I drove home and at that moment knew that my life had just changed forever. How could something so pure be turned into something so disgusting? The logical move was to confront Jessica, get her side of the story, and go from there in a civil way. But something in me must have broken when I felt that betrayal, and I decided to go about it in the most vicious way possible. I developed a plan to completely ruin the lives of both my wife and my double-crossing best friend. All the pieces were in place and both had a huge amount to lose in the end. I'd be out of a marriage, but at least I could have the satisfaction of knowing that justice had been served. The next morning, I quietly put on my coat and walked out of my house without a word to anyone. I knew the kids would be in school for the next 7 hours and Jessica would be at work with Eric all day. I first wanted to let Eric's wife know exactly what was going on. I called her and told her everything, which I figured would result in her calling Eric to confront him. Word must have spread quickly because 30 minutes later, Jessica began calling me. I missed 5 of her calls because I had decided to go to the HR department of the hospital where her and Eric worked and told them everything, given that there was a strict no relationships policy. It was a huge violation of their contracts. They thanked me for the information and I drove to my attorney's office. At that point, all the pieces were in place and the fireworks were ready to go off for the first time since hearing them in the hotel room. I felt a smile spread across my face and a sense of justice penetrating my soul. When I arrived home, Jessica was standing in the driveway crying hysterically, shouting that she was sorry. I confronted her saying that I had a very busy morning and pretended to not know what she was talking about. As I asked her what was wrong and comforted her, her crocodile tears suddenly stopped. She looked at me with an expression of disbelief that I had gone about this in such a twisted manner. At that moment, I winked at her and said, I am a doctor and I believe that this treatment plan is the proper course of action. The tears started flowing again and she chased me into the house, continuing to apologize. She begged to explain her side of the story in a frenzy. I was just about to give her the chance to elaborate when her phone rang. It was her dad, and little did she know that the games were just beginning. All I heard for the next 10 minutes was her father yelling at her about how she had no loyalty. Little had she known that I sent the audio recording to her parents as I pulled up to the house, and they happened to love me and the life that I had provided for her and the children. While her father screamed at her, I got a phone call from Eric, who was furious at me. He swore up and down that nothing had happened and that I was totally wrong. And at that moment I sent him the audio recording as well. His wife had already heard it and he did not stand a chance. The anger began to give weight to a tearful apology from him, and he knew that his marriage was over and that he would lose custody of his children. I signed off asking him if slapping my wife's butt was worth the price he had paid, and he silently hung up. I then walked over to her and told her that I would be taking full custody of the kids and that I had bought boxes and rented a U-Haul for her to pack her things and leave. She told me that she had nowhere to go as her mom and dad were furious with her. I replied, "That's too bad, but you should have thought of that before you decided to screw around on me." I suggested that she stay at Eric's, but then remarked that he was kicked out of the house as well. At that point, I asked her to start packing and took a deep breath as she slowly walked away, completely defeated. On the way out, she made a few attempts at reconciling, but stood firmly and without hesitation. I had won the battle and there was nothing more to be said. With her hand hung low and tears streaming down her face, she walked out of the house, loaded up the U-Haul, and asked if she could change into her work uniform before she left. I told her that wouldn't be necessary, as if she looked at her messages, there should be one from her supervisor that said she was suspended. Sure enough, she checked her messages and started bawling even harder. I walked into the house with a nostalgic feeling of justice penetrating my soul. Later that evening, I would find out that Eric's wife had kicked him out and filed for divorce, in addition to going after full custody of their children. I guess some justice really does exist in this world. And it's a beautiful thing. Jessica and Eric were terminated from their jobs and they decided to rent out an apartment. Last I heard, the trauma of being found out caused them to break up and they split. Jessica reached out to her parents, but they cut off all communication, which led to her having to live on her own and struggle the house, the kids, along with a chunk of Eric's savings and future retirement funds were taken from him in the divorce settlement, as being involved with co-workers is like a scarlet letter in the medical field. He was forced to move out of state and started an auto shop. He's still bitter and says he'll never forgive me, but I couldn't care less. I currently am doing amazing. The kids are growing up so fast and having them around is a blessing. I've been able to pay off my debt and the practice is booming. They see Jessica every other weekend and have supervised visitation with a court-appointed individual. Life is never perfect. But if you work hard and do the right thing, things will eventually work out in your favor. To all those out there who have been wronged by your partner, don't give up and never forget the power of justice. Doing the right thing is supposed to be the best option. However, it doesn't give you the warm and fuzzy feeling that completely getting even does. I am not advocating that you come up with an elaborate plan to even the score. But in the moment when your face feels flushed and hot and a tingling sensation runs up and down your spine, you might just do the same thing. Talk about a bloodbath without a finger being laid on anyone. I would say the moral of the story is not to double-cross your husband when they are a doctor. Doctors are smart, and it makes me wonder if the person who posted this story may have been a surgeon, because that was justice delivered with the precision of one overall. Got it right. I can't believe how nasty his wife was to have kids. A perfect life and a loving husband, and then rip his heart out by cheating with his best friend. As far as Opie's friend, Eric, goes, I cannot believe how disgusting this guy is. He needs to take a long look in the mirror and realize he has no loyalty, and heart serves him right for being outcasted by the entire medical community. Thank you for sharing this wonderful story with us. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's story. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also comment below with your thoughts on what happened. Take care.